Dismantling Obamacare. Republicans win an initial victory in their efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. We're on Capitol Hill as lawmakers push ahead. Courting conservatives. President Donald Trump is in full sales mode as he tries to make his case for the GOP health care plan. A priestly perspective.
I think it is important for us to understand is when we are talking about immigration, we are talking about people.
My one-on-one interview with Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez on immigration. Vocation shortage. In a new interview with a German newspaper, the Holy Father offers solutions. And it begins with prayer. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, March 9th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The Obamacare repeal is one step closer to reality tonight after lawmakers worked around the clock. Wyatt Goolsbee is standing by at the White House, and Jason Calvi, our correspondent, is on Capitol Hill. Jason.
Lauren, debate carried on in the room behind me more than 27 hours. The Energy and Commerce Committee finally approving the GOP Obamacare replacement on a party line vote. And in a pre-dawn victory in the Ways and Means Committee, they also approved the bill, which abolishes Obamacare's tax penalties for those without health insurance.
Without objection, this committee stands adjourned.
As House committees wrap up work on legislation undoing President Obama's health care law, Speaker Paul Ryan tries to close the deal with his party.
This is the closest we will ever get to repealing and replacing Obamacare.
Mr. Bishop.
The first vote came before dawn in the Ways and Means Committee. And this morning, staffers supplied the coffee as the Energy and Commerce panel pushed forward with its work.
How many coffees have you had this morning? Are you falling asleep as you're listening?
I don't even know anymore. I just keep drinking them.
Democrats protested and pointed to opposition from doctors and consumer groups.
They run the House, they have the majority, but I think it's important for us to continue to work with engaging the public because ultimately the people will rule.
Democrats say the GOP will yank coverage from many of the 20 million Americans who got it under Obamacare. Ola is one of them.
In college, I was diagnosed with a post-transplant cancer, and last year I received treatment. I did chemo at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and because of the Affordable Care Act, I could stay on my parents' health insurance and receive access to low-cost treatment.
But the Republican plan keeps that part of Obamacare, allowing children to stay on their parents' insurance until age 26.
The Obamacare repeal now heads to the House Budget Committee. When it passes there, it will move to the full House for a vote. Now, Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton tweeted today that it can't pass the Senate without major changes. Lauren?
You've told us about the conservative groups opposing the GOP plan. Who else has been speaking out?
Well, the American Medical Association and the AARP both supported Obamacare, but now they've come out against this GOP plan.
Okay, Jason Calvi, correspondent on Capitol Hill. Thank you very much, Jason. The White House continues its full-court press, pressuring conservative lawmakers who still oppose the Republican health care plan. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the White House. Wyatt.
Lauren, the White House remains in full sell mode on the GOP health care plan, and Vice President Mike Pence is playing a key role in making the pitch. Pence announced he will go to Louisville, Kentucky Saturday, the home state of Senator Rand Paul, a staunch opponent of the new bill.
At the White House these days, we're in the promise-keeping business again in Washington, D.C.
As the vice president meets with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, Republicans say passing an Obamacare replacement is a team sport.
We're working hand in glove with President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary Price. This is an all hands on deck because you know what? We all ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare.
The president is courting naysayers over meals in the White House dining room. And behind closed doors, one such meeting with former rival Ted Cruz and earlier this week, Marco Rubio.
Any major piece of legislation takes a lot of explanation. The president's been very committed to talking to members of Congress and the Senate, and the president will continue to engage very actively with the House and the Senate to get this done.
Democrats are united in their opposition to the bill, and some conservatives worry it's not a full repeal of Obamacare.
Well, I think it needs work.
Tim Chapman is with Heritage Action for America, one of the groups that met with President Trump at the White House last night.
I thought that his willingness to call people in and listen to different points of view was something that we should all be pretty excited about. So as long as the dialogue remains open and as long as conservatives are able to kind of influence the process as we go forward.
The White House is seeking input from all sides in the healthcare conversation. Trump tweeted that he had a great discussion yesterday with Democratic Representative Elijah Cummings, and tonight Vice President Pence is hosting a pro-life listening session. Lauren?
Something to see that on the Vice President's agenda. What's expected from that session?
Yes, we've spoken to one of the groups in attendance. They tell us they want to make sure pro-life concerns are addressed in the Obamacare repeal and replacement. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee at the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange says the website will work with tech companies to help defend them against the CIA's hacking tool. Assange says some companies have asked for more details about the CIA's cyber espionage toolkit, included in the WikiLeaks documents released earlier this week. The Department of Homeland Security says arrests of people crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally dropped about 44% during President Trump's first full month in office. More than 23,000 people were arrested in February compared to 42,000 in January. It's not clear what prompted the steep decline, but the Trump administration suggests it's a sign the president's immigration policies are working. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee approves President Trump's pick for U.S. ambassador to Israel. Members of the Republican-led panel voted largely along party lines to recommend the full Senate consider David Friedman's nomination. The attorney once worked as President Trump's bankruptcy lawyer. His nomination comes as the president considers moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Other stories our EWTN News nightly team is covering in today's world. German police say several people have been injured in an axe attack at Dusseldorf's main train station. A police spokesman says 2 suspected attackers were arrested. A retired police officer in the Philippines says he's ready to testify against President Rodrigo Duterte. The officer who linked Duterte to hundreds of killings in an anti-drug crackdown says he'll help authorities gather evidence. The Catholic Church has also spoken out against the violent crackdown, which has left thousands of drug suspects dead. A great loss for the Ethiopian Catholic Church. 4 religious sisters from the Congregation of the Daughters of St. Anne are dead after a car accident in Ethiopia. A 5th is in a coma. 2 others critically injured. A Vatican agency says the sisters, between the ages of 25 and 50, were driving to a funeral when a truck overtook them, causing the accident. Pope Francis stresses that removing the celibacy rule is not the answer to the priest shortage. The Holy Father made the comments in an interview with a German newspaper on a range of topics, including priestly vocations. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovelin joins us from Rome. Mary, the interview started off with a question about the shrinking number of priests around the world, and Pope Francis acknowledged that this problem is really serious. What is the solution in his eyes?
Lauren, Pope Francis proposed a few solutions. First of all, he said we need to pray for more vocations, and this is something that the whole church can do. But he also said we need to reach out to young people, because young people may be discerning what their vocation is in life right now. The next synod to be held here in the Vatican will be just on that topic, helping young people find their vocations. He said they're disenfranchised, they're lost, so we need to accompany them, and maybe some of them have a calling to the priesthood, and helping them find that out. And lastly, he said that there are declining birth rates all over the world. People have stopped having large families, and because of that, you know, we feel that in the church as well with a lack of vocations.
Right. He says ending the requirement of priestly celibacy is not a solution. But how does he respond to the idea of maybe using seasoned married men to deal with the priest shortage in isolated areas?
That's right, Lauren. The interview had asked him about, you know, there's a vocation crisis, but how about allowing married priesthood, not requiring priests to remain celibate? He said that is definitely not the answer. And then the interviewer asked him about this idea of what are called veri probati. These are married men who have become deacons, who are tested and trusted by the society and are therefore deacons within the church. They've been ordained such, and maybe opening the priesthood to these men. And he said it would depend on the circumstances. He said, well, we would just be even discussing it. We're not doing this. He said, but we could discuss it. We could think about it. And it would depend on the needs of the area. And if we think of some place like Brazil, for example, there's one priest for every 10,000 people, there are place where there's an extreme priest shortage. She said maybe in these cases we could discuss the possibility of opening the priesthood to these tested married men who are already in the diaconate.
You know, one other thing before we go I wanted to talk to you about. The Pope speaks to many people who suffer spiritual crises. What does he have to say about these empty moments that all of us probably have had, and these dark spiritual moments?
This was a nice part of the interview, Lauren, when you hear the Pope talking about how he himself has had dark moments of faith, maybe times of emptiness, as he called it. And he said any faith that hasn't been tested in his way is kind of an infantile, childlike faith still. It hasn't been tested, you know, as we do experience the crosses in our lives, even with periods of emptiness. We've heard the saints talk about this, where they feel the absence of God, or they may even have doubts in their faith. And it's nice to hear that the Pope himself, as he said in this interview, has experienced those. And he said, you know, just makes him stronger. It's part of the Christian way.
I remember hearing Mother Teresa say the exact same thing. Mary Shevlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Lauren.
You can read more about the Pope's comments at our news partners, ncregister.com. Coming up, my one-on-one interview with Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles.
That we need to know our faith better. In that way, then we can share that with other people.
His tips to stay faithful in today's world. And a Peruvian flash mob. Young people join forces to defend life. The Vice President of the U.S. Conference on Catholic Bishops warns a deepening secularism in America. Archbishop Jose Gomez wrote a pastoral letter pointing out our elites are seeking through many means to drive God out of our daily lives and to silence his voice in the human heart. In our interview yesterday, I asked the Archbishop how Catholics can fight against that.
The purpose of my pastoral letter is to remind everybody the basic truth that God created us. I mean, most of the time we just take it for granted. And I think our society is getting to that point that we ignore God and we try to build our own way of living without really counting on the reality of being children of God. So I think the way that we do it is just understanding better our situation, the beauty of God thinking of me and created me, and sharing that with the people.
You also wrote that Catholics must become saints for our times. What does that mean?
Well, that means that first of all, that we need to know our faith. I think it's important for us, and I think what you do and EWTN does is just a great blessing, because it helps people to know our faith. I think that's the biggest challenge that we have in our society, especially for Catholics, that we need to know our faith better. In that way, then we can share that with other people. So becoming saints is trying to imitate Jesus Christ and be another Christ in our society.
And does that mean suffering?
Yes, but also it means that we are giving meaning to any suffering. It's a different way of seeing things when we really think that suffering or that good thing that is happening is because it's part of the plan of God for us.
Immigration is a very big issue right now in Washington, D.C. You're the spiritual leader of the biggest archdiocese in the United States, 5 million Catholics. That's a lot of flock. Large immigrant population. You were born in Mexico. You're now a U.S. citizen. You must have a very personal perspective on immigration. What would you tell President Trump right now?
I think it is important for us to understand is when we are talking about immigration, we are talking about people, parents and children, brothers and sisters, families. So it's not just about a legal situation or civic issue. It is about people. And I think the first thing that we as Catholics need to remember is that our faith helps us to respect and love the dignity of the human person. So, as you know, most of the people that come as immigrants to our country come because they want a better life, and especially they want to give a better life to the children. So we should not forget that. I think when we understand that, then it's easier for us to understand that maybe we can find the way that these people are here legally, that we don't want to have, 11 million undocumented people. But let's try to find a way that those people that are here because they want to make a contribution to society, improve their lives, and give a better life for their children, they find a way to be legal in our country.
And the children, I would imagine, are the most important element of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the experience that I have in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles with, unfortunately, the last 8 years with almost 3 million people that were deported, it's just seeing the children that lose their parents. Because one of them, the father or the mother, is deported, so the family is destroyed. And the children are just suffering because they cannot see their father or mother for a long period of time. So that's what it is all about. And in the positive side, just think about it, how important it is for a child, a boy or a girl, to have a father and a mother, a family. That's
La Sagrada Familia.
That's
like that.
So that's what we need to find the solution to this immigration reality. It's not just something in our country, it's a global reality. People are going to move. People move in the old times, coming from Europe to the United States, or from Latin America to the United States, and now you take a plane and you are there in 20 minutes.
That's right. Or in your case, you're there in 8 hours overnight.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us after getting off of a red eye. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. A flash mob breaks out in downtown Lima, Peru, all to build excitement around Marcha por la Vida, or March for Life.
Abre tus ojos, mira hacia arriba, ahora la calle es nuestra, defiende la vida.
The street is ours, defend life. That's the motto for this year's March for Life, which will take place in that nation's capital in a little more than 2 weeks. Organizers are expecting an even larger mob on March 25th. More than 750,000 people took part last year, and it looks like fun. The pro-life battle here in the United States continues on the state level with efforts to reshape abortion laws. A new report by Americans United for Life offers a state-by-state guide for policymakers and defenders of life. Evangeline Bartz, Corporate Counsel for Americans United for Life, joins us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having Americans United for Life.
The Bible, right here for life.
The playbook.
The playbook. And because it has model legislation, it has analysis, it has recommendations, it has the best and worst lists. Let's talk about that. Let's start with the best.
Oklahoma this year. The best states are ones that have the greatest amount of protection for life, and here we're talking about on the abortion issue, on end-of-life issues, on healthcare rights of conscience, on assisted reproductive technologies that have life implications. So we take a look at all of those areas, and every year we evaluate the states and come up with the list with the most protective and the least protective.
Let's look at that list again. It's Oklahoma, Kansas, Louisiana, and now let's look at the worst list. That worst list is Washington State, California, and Vermont, the coasts. Why are they the least protective?
Well, this reflects, of course, political realities. And so, in general, we have, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, we have legislatures and governors who are in the throes of the pro-abortion industry, the anti-life movements. And so, in the heartland, you have a greater population interested in pro-life vision and a culture of life, and that's reflected in their legislators and governors.
What you found in this book is basically an analysis of 2016. Is that right? You found what's working and what's not working. What is the major recommendation to come out of this book for this very pro-life political term that we are in?
Yes, we have a great opportunity here to continue to advance pro-life protection as a result of the election, which has its spillover effect in the states as well. So this is a great opportunity. Now, the caution would be, or the concern that the pro-life community has had is what effect did the Hellerstedt decision, which was a setback, quite frankly, for the pro-life movement.
And very quickly, that was in Texas, and the Supreme Court shot this down, saying that you do not need to have safety additional safety protections in abortion clinics. Is that correct?
Well, the court overturned a common sense law that Texas had enacted that involved common sense safety regulations for abortion clinics, as well as admitting privileges for for doctors that perform abortions.
And when people read this book, they will now understand how to combat something like that, what happened in Texas.
Well, what we did is, in light of the Hellerstedt decision, we revisited our models and we refined them in light of the outcome of Hellerstedt so that they would withstand Hellerstedt scrutiny. Therefore, we can still enact clinic safety regulations, health and safety standards for women, but we have to meet the standards and the suggestions that the decision laid out, including evidence of the need for these, and including enforcing regulations that are already in place. The Supreme Court said we could do that. And so we have added an enforcement module to our legislation for this year so that states not only have laws on the book, but these laws are going to be enforced, and there are penalties if there are violations.
Well, it looks like we're out of time here, but I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. The book is Defending Life.
Thank you.
Up next, a court case centered on Catholic education. One school defends its right to choose its religious leaders. Today we honor St. Francis of Rome, one of the greatest mystics of the 15th century. At age 11, she wanted to become a nun, but her parents thought differently. She was married by 12 and had several children. She's known for her charity to the poor. Francis was declared a saint in 1608 by Pope Paul V. Now we turn to a case that started out as a wrongful termination lawsuit, but is turning into a battle over religious freedom. Leaders of a Catholic school in New York went to court this week to defend their right to choose a principal without government interference. The school is defending itself against a suit by a former principal who claims she was terminated because she was a woman. Joining us now is Eric Baxter, a senior attorney with the public interest law firm Beckett, and you are defending St. Anthony's School and the Archdiocese of New York. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Tell us what is happening with this case. You contend the principal plays the role of a religious leader, and because of that, she should be granted the same rights as a minister.
So this principal, she oversees the religious curriculum, she oversees all of the religious teachers, she leads the students every day in prayer, encourages students to live a Catholic life, to go to Mass. All of those things are part of her duties, and it's important for religious organizations to be able to pick their principals without government interference.
But she's not a minister, so why should the law treat her the same way?
The law, there's what's called a ministerial exception in the law, which says that under the First Amendment, churches receive special solicitude and are free to hire and employ people without government interference. It's not about whether your title is a minister, it's about whether your role is one as a religious leader or someone who gives religious message.
How important is this case in the realm of religious liberty? Do you expect to see many more cases like this?
Actually, the Supreme Court about 5 years ago issued a major ruling that should help courts see that they have to stay out of employment decisions by religious organizations. Unfortunately, this plaintiff tried to make this about discrimination, and her attorney said that these schools, religious schools, are a threat to our democracy, and so this was an important opportunity for Beckett to stand up and defend the Archdiocese of New York.
You're not going to want to answer this question, but how would that woman win?
Well, under this law, she cannot win as a religious leader in a school. The church has to be free to choose to hire her if she's not meeting the mission.
Then why did she file suit?
It's really an unfortunate mistake, and hopefully the Second Circuit's going to get this one right.
If they don't, what will happen?
It could be remanded to a lower court for further decision making, but I felt really good about the oral argument that the court saw that they can't interfere in the hiring decisions of a religious organization.
Okay, and when will the case be decided?
Probably in the next 3 or 4 months, but you never know.
Guess
We're
what?
Waiting to see.
In 3 or 4 months, we'll see you back here.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
I look forward to it.
All right, thank you so much, Eric Baxter with Beckett. That does it for us this evening. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook and Twitter for behind-the-scenes looks at the news. We leave you with another look at this great pro-life flash mob. Take a look at this in Peru. Look at these guys jumping up and down. This is right before a pro-life rally. Good night, everyone, and God bless.
Oye, abre tus ojos, mira hacia arriba.